if you can explain what is the crack?
Hey, the crack.
How can I have the crack? What's the crack?
What is the crack? You are the crack.
Welcome back to Audio Crack. We have a very, very interesting show for you today. A lot of weird topics. P. Diddy, Trump's assassin. We got a little more background on him. Blowing up pagers in the Middle East. Crazy stuff. And we got some sports for you. We have a episode with a couple members of my congressional campaign, Zach Worrell, Elliot Harding. We have two lawyers who are going to join us to talk P. Diddy and to talk about there's a lot of weird background on this new Trump shooter. He was in a BlackRock commercial as well, like the other Trump shooter. So it's weird, and we're going to get into it. But first, I want to talk to you about our presenting sponsor, Dub. If you're a crackhead, if you're listening right now, it's all thanks to Dub. Dub is like eBay for investing. They built a marketplace where you can copy the investments of great traders or be the trader who gets copied. It's the democratization of access to hedge funds. So a lot of these people who are super rich, rock stars, actors, people with millions of dollars who aren't that financially savvy and want to live their lives and not just be watching the market all day. They put their money in these hedge funds who get large returns, these hedge fund managers who basically won't take on clients unless they have millions of dollars so that they can get a kickback from it. Well, guess what? Dub is allowing you to get the same access to those returns with way less money. It's basically you're allowed to pick people instead of stocks to invest. So it's really like bringing it to the masses. Today, like you do need millions to like get access to these, 6-7% returns that beat the market. But Dub allows you to have access to it with, just a regular amount of savings for regular people. So there's portfolios based on politicians, insiders, and hedge funds. Users have built portfolios that track their public trade filings. One of the top performers is the Pelosi portfolio. It is up 70% this year. And there's also portfolios built by up-and-coming traders. Users have also built portfolios trading tons of unique strategies. Some of them are beating Pelosi and now have thousands of copiers. Best part is no one can fake their performance. And this is what makes Dub unique from any other copy trading platform. Dub Capital is SEC registered investment advisor, and Dub Financial is a broker dealer and member of FINRA, just like Fidelity or Schwab. They are also SIPC insured up to $500K. They are the best copy trading platform on the market. They're SEC registered, and that is not the Southeastern Conference. That is the Securities and Exchange Commission. And my favorite part about it is that trades happen automatically. So once you put your money in and you choose what portfolio you want trading for you, you don't have to check your stocks every day. You don't have to, make sure when the market's down that you're cashing out and making sure you like cover your losses, because it does it automatically for you. It's awesome. It's having like a personal money manager. So, you don't get caught out when the market plunges. It's honestly an amazing product, and I use it myself. I've been up 10%, and it's only been like 3 weeks. So like if we continue on that trajectory, we're going to be cooking well. So yeah, so I'd recommend, take some stuff out of your savings, throw it in there. Honestly, the returns are insane. I'd recommend signing up for the 1 week free trial of Dub, cancel at any time, invite friends and get $20 each. So if you send your link into a group chat, let's say your fantasy football group chat, they all sign up, you get $20 each from them. Let's say you're in a 10-person league, that's $200. Start investing. So, definitely try it out. Try out my link. That is dubapp.com-Billy. That is dubapp.com-Billy. Check it out. Barstool Sports is a paid promoter for Dub and receives compensation for promotion of its services. This is not investment advice. Past performance does not guarantee future results. Welcome to Audio Crack. We have some very special guests today, catching up on some crazy issues. You may remember these two guys from the first Trump assassination attempt episode. We have Elliot Harding, Zach Worrell, two guys who worked on my campaign for Congress back in the day. Two of the most brilliant political and law minds. These guys were in a group chat. Sometimes they'll be going at each other about legal issues for days. And it's actually great, legal insights that, the layman does not know. But today we got to catch up. There's been another Trump assassination attempt. There's pagers blowing up in the Middle East. There's P. Diddy getting arrested. And the only guys I could think of who would be able to break down all of these issues at the exact same time are you guys. So thanks for coming on such short notice. How you guys doing?
Great. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Doing good. We got to meet on better circumstances than Trump getting shot at.
This time the guy, at least they missed, I think, right?
Yeah.
Did he get any shots off?
He didn't get a shot off. So what happened was there was a Secret Service agent ahead of Trump, I guess a hole or two ahead of Trump, and he saw a rifle sticking through the fence, and he started taking shots at him, and the guy ran off.
Yeah, and then he jumped in a car, and they caught him after a car chase. So, I mean, it's really crazy. This guy apparently was in another BlackRock sponsored ad, much like Crooks, who was in another BlackRock sponsored ad. It gets real weird from there. Apparently, this guy was a construction worker who was living in North Carolina, then, was unemployed and ended up going to Hawaii and owning a property and still collecting unemployment, but somehow was also helping recruit for the Ukrainian army in trying to pay people $1,200 to go to Ukraine to get involved in the Ukrainian Foreign Legion or the Foreign Forces. There was something about him trying to help move Afghani individuals who had been working for the U.S. government and trying to relocate them to Ukraine to fight for Ukraine. Very weird situation. I mean, this guy now he's under custody, but it's just, with all the stuff that's like since the past shooting, we've seen a total like 360. No one even remembers that Trump got shot in the ear, was bleeding. Like that seems like a thing of the past. Like how has it been just so erased so quickly in like the public eyes and ears of like the media and whatnot?
So I can take this one. So in politics, they say a week is an eternity. And so it's been 7 weeks. So 8 weeks, it's been 8 eternities. And so if you follow politics long enough, you realize that things go away from memory really fast. I think another part of it, though, is they're intentionally trying to memory hold this stuff. If Joe Biden or Kamala Harris had been shot at, that it would be wall-to-wall continuous from now to the election.
That's right. Yeah. I think also, you've seen them try to downplay it. You've seen them try to make a lot of comments about Trump's ear. They're always saying, where's the scar? Where's the blood? I don't see it. A lot of people want to act like he wasn't shot or maybe it was shrapnel, and they just kind of wash their hands of it as if it wasn't a big deal. And then now with this issue in Florida, they're trying to act even more conspiratorial, as if it wasn't actually legit. The guy wasn't there to do something, or was it inside? They're just coming up with tons of different reasons to downplay it as if it's not a legitimate threat.
Well, one of the stupidest lines I've seen is that this wasn't an assassination attempt. But Elliot, being the criminal defense expert, what is the definition of attempt, legally speaking?
Yeah, I mean, in this situation, it's just taking an act in furtherance of the commission of the crime. And so, I mean, he intentionally went to the guy's vicinity, probably trespassing with this firearm. You were talking earlier about the engagement with the Secret Service member, as far as who got shots off with what. But at the end of the day, if you walked into any other setting like this guy did, let's say it was a court or it was a school or it was the Capitol, they're going to string you up as if you were trying to accomplish an act of terrorism or something of that nature. And to sit there and, like you said earlier, memory hole it and try to treat it as if it's, I don't know, some bystander that happens to be strapped and wants to sneak onto the golf course. That's just not reality.
Right. They're trying to make it sound like, there was just some random guy walking through with a gun that just happened to be near Trump. It wasn't really an assassination attempt. But as you said, Elliot, it's the perpetrator has to intend the crime be committed and take a substantial step towards accomplishing the crime. And so setting up an impromptu sniper's nest with, clay barricades to prevent you from getting shot, scoping the whole thing out, I'd say this qualifies easily as an attempt, wouldn't you?
I mean, pulling the trigger isn't the only threshold thing that calls something an attempt, right? And that's what I'm saying is if the threshold isn't whether or not a bullet was fired. There's a lot of steps taken up until the point that a trigger has to be pulled, and he clearly satisfied those things. So it'd be no different than if Pennsylvania, if the Secret Service sniper had identified crooks on the roof and taken him out before he pulled the trigger. Would we sit there and say, oh, well, that was totally fine. He clearly wasn't attempting to shoot at Trump. It doesn't require the trigger to put us into the reality of what's going on here.
I mean, the craziest thing is this guy was very well known to law enforcement, Ryan Ruth. So basically, this guy had been showing up at rallies for like Kamala Harris, rallies in D.C. for Ukraine. And he had like a checkered history of like, he even got charged for being in possession of weapons of mass destruction.
We started a whole ass war in the Middle East over that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But how the hell so the specific weapon he had was a binary explosive with a 10-inch detonation cord and a blasting cap. So is that technically a weapon of mass destruction?
I don't know what the relevant law defines a weapon of mass destruction as. I mean, it's clearly a bomb, and if it can kill a bunch of people, I mean, he got charged. Did he ever get convicted? I don't think so. I think he just got charged, right?
Yeah.
No, this guy hadn't been convicted of anything yet. It'll take a while.
In reference to an illegal automatic firearm. So he had a fully automatic machine gun. This guy apparently, this was in 2002.
Oh.
Yeah, it was the charge occurred during a traffic stop in December 2002. Ruth was stopped during a traffic stop. He reportedly placed his hand on a firearm. He then drove to his roofing business and he locked himself inside the business for 3 hours. So, I mean, this is just a weird situation. He was camping out in a bush for 12 hours for, the former President Trump. I mean, it's just weird.
There are a lot of questions like, this was not a publicly known thing. Yeah, Trump goes to his golf courses, but how did he know 12 hours in advance plus in order to plan to get there? Like, where was he? Is he just camping out in Florida? He lives in Hawaii. So, like, that takes a little bit of effort to get to Florida. How did he know Trump was going to be there at the golf course? Just a bunch of questions that are not being satisfactorily answered. At some point, like with Crooks, the other guy too, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I am a coincidence denier. It's like how many people who have appeared in BlackRock ads happen to find the one spot where there is no Secret Service agent able to get a gun, at least pointed in the direction of the guy before we start asking either is it an inside job or is he getting tipped off somehow either from inside the Secret Service or foreign powers? We got to start asking questions. They're not being answered.
Well, the good thing here is the guy's still alive. And I say that because there's something to try to pick apart, right? So often in these cases, someone gets assassinated or they get killed themselves, understandably in the Crook situation, the guy's an active shooter. But even then you get the Lee Harvey Oswalds or the Sirhans where they're getting killed later, like Lee Harvey Oswald did by Jack Ruby, where it's like we don't have the ability to unpack what might actually have been going on here. Not to say that this guy won't just clam up and assert his Fifth Amendment right and maybe never leaks any information, but there's something to probe into there, and who knows if there's something more to it. Depending on which party's in power. Ron DeSantis will not turn him over to the feds. That's a really, that's a really big thing.
That's actually huge.
Yeah, it's huge because from an investigation standpoint and a security standpoint, I think he's saying, I don't trust the feds to keep this guy alive. That's one thing. But also, who knows what type of things the state can do to leverage prosecutorial outcomes to get information from him to actually investigate more. Meaning, this guy didn't pull a trigger on Trump. He shouldn't be facing a murder charge. He shouldn't. He should face something serious. But the likelihood of him going away for life is zero because he didn't shoot anybody. And so if you're able to negotiate a lower plea deal for him to actually turn over legitimate conspiracy information, it'd be really interesting to see how Florida handles it, in my opinion.
I mean, that's actually, I didn't know that. I thought the feds would have definitely had him.
No, DeSantis won't give it to him, and he doesn't have to either. That's the beautiful thing about it, is they got him first. Yes, they'll put a detainer on him, but it's up for the governor to satisfy the detainer, and he has every right not to do it.
That's crazy because there was claims that Crooks's body had been just immediately cremated, like extremely fast and suspiciously, which honestly, that's sketch.
It's almost like Osama bin Laden. Oh, we threw the body in the ocean. Oops.
Yeah. I mean, so Clay Higgins, a Louisiana Republican, like he made claims that he was trying to examine Crooks's body on August 5th, 2024 as a part of his investigation. And the FBI was like, well, his body's gone. We cremated it. So, that's just weird. I mean, like, imagine if Florida gets to the bottom of this, like, hey, there is, individuals who are being radicalized and then given tons of resources. Because this guy, Ruth, even himself was saying that his like Hawaiian property, which I think was just an Airbnb he was supposed to be renting out, wasn't making any money. And, he apparently had money to give to people to try to go to Ukraine to fight against Russia. And it's just damn weird. And then the response is that, oh, we never took from the Ukrainians and everyone involved in that whole effort was that like, oh, we never took this guy seriously. We just always thought that he was a crazy maniac who was looking to be a hero in this whole situation. So, I mean, that is a little more plausible, but hey, what if you approach a guy like this and be like, hey, you're a fanatic. Like, here's a gun and here's some info, go shoot Trump. Like, there's tons of people out there. And it's nuts because the rhetoric and everything is so unhinged when it comes to Trump. Like, there's all the, like, running up to the last election, there was all these like plots by militia groups to like take out like Democratic lawmakers in some ways. And like, remember when they got it, like
Gretchen Whitmer.
Yeah.
That was entrapment. The feds screwed that one up royally, to the point where the guys got off, or at least most of them.
Explain entrapment for a non-legal educated.
To put it succinctly, it's when the state or law enforcement, in this case, has effectively coerced or influenced you to engage in criminal behavior that you were not predisposed to have engaged in otherwise, and then acts in a manner to facilitate that. And then they try to pin it on you. So the big kicker is can they prove entrapment's an affirmative defense, which is something that the defendant has to establish in order to get out of the charge. And it's pretty tough usually. I mean, everyone wants to say entrapment, but the big kicker is proving that you were not predisposed to have engaged in that behavior otherwise. And so when we're dealing with something like terrorism or kidnapping a governor, which is an act of terrorism, and by the way, I'm digressing, but terrorism has a much more loose definition than people think as well. It's generally destruction of property or targeting of people for a political purpose. And so when you go about a kidnapping of a governor, based on an ideological stance, it's clearly terrorism. But to prove that someone wasn't ideologically like predisposed to doing that is kind of tough, because you're dealing with what's inside someone's head. But the feds in the Gretchen Whitmer case just screwed that one up so bad that most of the guys, I think, got off because of that. Now, going back to this Florida shooting attempt with Trump, this is the perfect type of case. I'm a big believer of when someone has found their way into the system, like a hacker or a whistleblower, or in this case, somebody who's trying to do something and he snuck his way through security and kind of found the guy's schedule, knew where he was, I'm a big believer of trying to curry some favor to get information as to what was going on and how he knew about it. And I'm not saying you let the guy off, but it's a legitimate negotiation tactic. And I appreciate, I'm not saying, I don't know that DeSantis and the Florida authorities are going to, not that he's the prosecutor, but I don't know how the Florida authorities are going to handle it. But I hope they seriously consider it, because as dangerous as this guy appears to be, he didn't actually shoot anybody. And so in that respect, I think that it's worth figuring out actually what was going on here.
But and another part of it too, let's not just focus on the shooter. Another big thing here is the Secret Service protection.
Right.
If Donald Trump were the president of the United States, and this is within their authority to do, even if he's not, they would have had a much larger security detail with a much larger perimeter. There's no way that Kamala Harris would get on a golf course without Secret Service agents sweeping the entire exterior, all sorts of other things. But because the level of protection being offered right now by the Secret Service is lower than it could be, that's why there was only a dude a couple hundred yards ahead of Trump and who just happened to see the rifle. And so if this guy, I mean, clearly he's a loser and incompetent and not very good at anything. If he had proper weaponry, like a proper sniper rifle with, better technology, that could have been a relatively easy shot. You know, he had an AK-47 style weapon. I don't know exactly what that means. I'm assuming it's a different caliber than.
Not the most accurate of rifle.
Dependable, though. Dependable.
Oh, yeah. You could drag it through the mud behind a Jeep, run it over with a car, it'll work. And so, the Secret Service, you would think after somebody actually got a shot off at a former candidate for president in Donald Trump, that they would, be more seriously protecting him than they are. And the fact that they aren't like sweeping the golf course before he gets there and that sort of stuff, it just is, Hanlon's razor, never attribute to malice that which can be attributed to ignorance, right? So it's like, it could be that the Secret Service is just a bunch of idiots, or it could be that they're not taking their job seriously. There's a leak inside the department. There are a lot of questions that need to be answered, because this is the second time in 2 months that somebody got damn close to getting a good shot off at Trump, at least. And what are the changes? The lady stepped down and is going back to Garden Frito-Lay or whatever, who was at the head of the Secret Service. But what changes have there been? If anything, they've kept the Secret Service level of protection largely the same, because they're not giving him the maximum protection they can offer.
I mean, the whole situation's just crazy that basically there's two nut jobs who couldn't finish the job. There is an argument that liberals are just terrible shots because of their stance on gun ownership. But I mean, what happens next? I mean, are they going to end up beefing up his security? It almost seems like they're trying to get this guy. But why would they even want Trump to? I feel like if I was a Democratic Party, and let's say a leftist, and I wanted to like eliminate Trump from the equation, just him losing this, like you'd want him to lose and be alive, not die and then become something greater than he was on Earth type thing.
Yes and no. So it's like you're looking at it kind of from the political parties in the United States perspective, but there's another layer here. And so since World War II, there's been an established world order. We call it democracy. That's really a big integrated networks of the big military operations, the big industrial operations, everybody that has a world order that we adhere to. And Donald Trump threatens to upend that world order to include NATO and that sort of stuff. And so Donald Trump made it through a prime. So normally what happens in the primaries, especially presidential primaries, is you pre-commit all of the candidates to support the nominee. And so you have these upstart candidates like Ron Paul or Bernie Sanders. They get into the primary process. They start picking up steam. You pre-commit them to supporting the nominee, and then they pull the strings necessary to get a world order, democracy, whatever person through, so that they don't ever actually upend the apple cart. And Donald Trump got not only way too close, but he got into power, and you saw the tremendous effect that he had on everything. And so they're not going to let that happen again. Hopefully Donald Trump is able to win by big enough margins that, there's no chicanery or anything like that. But, they are not I don't know. I'm not saying there's a bunch of shadowy figures in a dark room planning to assassinate Trump, but it's like the established order has a huge interest in preventing Donald Trump from taking office again. And I don't know that there is a limit on what they will do to stop it. And so, yeah, it might turn Trump into a martyr, but, the JD Vance kind of ride the coattails and go in. It's like, yeah, I don't know. Donald Trump's the martyr there. So maybe JD Vance is on the inside. He's tied into the big money stuff in Silicon Valley and all that. I mean, who knows?
I mean, now this is the craziest twist to this whole story. So there was at Trump National Doral Resort in Miami, Florida in May of 2018. And so this was some people at the time thought this was like supposed to be an anti-Trump like attack, but there was this guy, and this connection's wild. So there's this guy called Jonathan Oddi, O-D-D-I, who on May 18th, 2018 entered the lobby of Trump National Doral Resort, stole an American flag, was yelling anti-Trump remarks, who then started firing shots at the ceiling and chandeliers, and then engaged in a gun battle with responding police officers. He was then shot and arrested. He was charged with attempted murder, creating a false fire alarm, and he was arrested. So this guy was a self-employed fitness trainer who then in his interrogation about like, hey, was this like an attack on Trump? The Secret Service was involved. And you can find these recordings online. He claimed that he had been a sex slave for P. Diddy during Diddy's relationship with singer Cassie. This is wild. So he alleged he was involved with sexual activities with both Diddy and Cassie. He stated that he was a sex slave by Diddy, who also was involved with male prostitutes. And also he claimed that Diddy and Rick Ross were gay. He claimed that he tried to sue Diddy and was paid off out of court. And basically at the time of this 2018 incident, like all of the statements during the police interrogations videos were like thought to be like, oh, this guy's just crazy. Like none of this could be true. It's like a conspiracy. This guy's definitely schizo, ran into the Trump thing. Now, 6 years later, we have Diddy arrested, and a lot of the stuff that this guy was saying turns out to be true. So, so he was just basically, Diddy was just charged with sex trafficking, racketeering, transportation to engage in prostitution. They raided his house, found AK-47s, thousands of bottles of lube and sex toys. And also the federal government claims to have had videos of these freak-offs where Diddy organized events where he manipulated women to have sex with male sex workers, just like this crazy guy said in an interrogation, and basically used recordings as blackmail to control victims. So all this has now come out. This guy who's shooting up Trump National, who everyone thought was crazy in these videos, it's all now coming out that Diddy, is now charged with these same things. So they don't know where this guy is from 2018. A lot of people think he's dead, but a lot of people also think he may just be in witness protection and has been helping out build a case against Diddy for the past 6 years. And everything he said is true, which is just a wild scandal of crazy, it's just like, what is that connection there? So a guy goes, shoots up Trump National, they catch him. He then is saying that like P. Diddy and Rick Ross are having these crazy parties where they have like male like prostitutes who are doing terrible things to women. Like there's like human trafficking. Diddy's like doing these freak off parties. It's crazy. He's paid me under the table. And now it all comes out that it's real. So it's like, what the hell is going on with P. Diddy? So how serious of offenses does when the feds go and raid a building, raid a compound, and arrest someone with these charges, how often or not are these do they have to go in with these, or do they really need concrete evidence to go through with warrants like these?
Ellie, do you want to take warrant requirements?
Sure. Generally speaking, it's the same threshold to execute any warrant is just going to be probable cause that they're going to have evidence of the crimes as alleged that a magistrate has sworn off on. Now, mind you, the Diddy case and the allegations are numerous. And I'm not going to say that the rich and powerful are treated differently, but they're definitely treated differently when it comes to the execution of this type of a warrant, such that if this was a case where it was just a one-off allegation, rather than a stacked series of multiple crimes, what you would likely have is, even if they had probable cause to go into somebody's house, they would have spoken to the target probably a few times, or their attorney. They would even potentially arrange for a conversation. Now, if you're really trying to get evidence, you're not going to give too much of a heads up about it. And I say that because then people are going to destroy it and mess with the house and things like that. But ultimately, Diddy's situation is he got arrested. It's not what they were looking for in the house, even though I'm sure they found stuff that's relevant. It's that he's now been picked up on these things. And that's the more serious situation here. And ultimately, same threshold standard of probable cause to arrest somebody, meaning you got to present enough evidence that a magistrate or a judge, magistrate is considered type of a judge, but finds that there's probable cause to believe that these crimes took place. And in federal court, sometimes they go straight and get you indicted first before they go off and get an arrest warrant. So meaning they could go to a grand jury and present evidence, and you're straight up indicted before they just go run of the mill arrest you for something as they would in state charges. So I haven't dug into the indictments or what's out there on Diddy. Candidly, I'd imagine it's federal charges given his...
it's federal sex trafficking and racketeering.
Yeah, so I'd imagine...
3 counts.
I'd imagine they went through the grand jury process first rather than just run off to a magistrate.
No, he was indicted by a federal grand jury first, yeah.
He's in a tough spot. I put this akin to the Jeff... Epstein said, I put him in the very similar category as to the allegations, as to the conduct. You're dealing with young, underage girls, in this case, boys too. You've got claims of drugging people, doing things against their will, recording it, bringing in rich and powerful people in there, putting them in precarious positions to either be tempted, coerced, or just recorded in the vicinity as means of probably blackmail and influence. The difference is that unlike Epstein, Diddy isn't a hedge fund manager where he's then potentially leveraging investments as a means of fostering these types of relationships. Instead, what you've got is somebody whose music career candidly kind of sucks, actually. Like, he's not the best rapper, yet his name and fame is at the top of the list, and that's probably due to his influence within the industry, right?
Well, there's an interesting parallel here with Epstein. Nobody knows what he was investing in. Nobody knows how he was getting such huge returns, yet he was perceived as being atop this hierarchy, despite an apparent lack of skill in the thing. So Diddy's in the same situation.
And Diddy's situation was, instead of it being like under some secret investment scheme, what you've got is him getting production value in boosting certain artists, right? I mean, we've seen the clips of him trying to be around Bieber at a real young age. Granted, Bieber thankfully had someone more like Usher in his back corner than Diddy, but Usher's has not. I don't know, but I don't think Usher's been alleged to be anywhere close to what we're hearing in this case.
He might be a victim as well.
It could be, and that's the thing is we're going to probably hear a lot. A lot of people are going to want to keep their mouth shut because they don't want to be affiliated with it. But I'm more interested in the conspiracy that Epstein was actually working for foreign interests in the same, and maybe Diddy was too. And that's the unique thing there.
I mean, honestly, that was Diddy just like throwing wild parties and trying to gain edges over executives and artists so that they're trapped under his record label. Like this Audi guy who was shooting up the Trump place was claiming that DJ Khaled, Rick Ross, that all these artists were compromised sexually with videos. He just sounds crazy. And he claimed that they were all like having like hooking up with Diddy. Like Diddy was like basically Pulp Fiction basement scening these guys, these large Rick Ross and DJ Khaled, which is just disturbing to the highest degree. But was he using it to like make sure no one was spreading like, anti-Zionist propaganda in their raps? Like that's just like wild. I mean, DJ Khaled, like, has he ever said anything like pro-Palestine?
I don't know if it's going to go so far as just what's the limit of propaganda. It could be very much about, I mean, if first of all, we're theorizing the relationship to somebody like Mossad, right? I mean, that's the theory that we're generally referring to. And I don't want anybody to make this out to sound like we're somehow, I'm not like an anti-Israel person or I'm not like anti-Semitic, like conspiracy, anything like that. But Mossad does have a track record of doing like, it's like the CIA. Like they do weird stuff, right? And they're very powerful, very influential.
They might have just blown up a bunch of pagers of everybody in Lebanon.
Yeah, we're about to get to that, right? And so the point is they have influence in ways that we don't know, and they try to achieve things that we don't know. And so I don't think it's like, oh, we want to prevent Palestinian support in these records as much as it's maybe we don't want these record labels to be funded by Muslim-based organizations. Right. Look at the amount of private equity from like the Saudis or from other groups that are trying to make their way into sports.
Yeah, Riyadh season.
Right. So you sit there and you're like, okay, well, if my interest is just to make sure those same types of entities don't get a foothold in America pop culture, it's not that I'm trying to prevent a particular narrative in DJ Khaled's video or something. It's that I don't want them to get a foothold in Hollywood or a foothold in the Grammys, and next thing. And so I think that's probably, I mean, if they were to be involved in something like this, I could see that being a reason. But again, I think we won't hear about it. Candidly, I'll be surprised if Diddy is alive in 2 years. I mean, look what happened to Epstein.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that will show, like, if he's still alive, it means that it was just like Diddy was a fucked up dude who liked, doing fucked up shit to keep people on his label.
He was just R. Kelly with an apparatus.
Yeah. R. Kelly to a different degree. Or here's the other side of it. What if, P. Diddy, very rich guy. P. Diddy just recently in 2023 filed a lawsuit against Ciroc, the ownership of Ciroc brand Diageo. So like at the other end of the day, like they could be like, okay, how are we going to take down Diddy? Diddy's trying to come at us and trying to get a piece of our $1 billion pie. We've been paying him millions, but he's not a billionaire. And now he wants like his share of Ciroc in all of his all the drink brands he's involved with. He wants like a bigger chunk because he built those brands bigger than him rapping about Ciroc is the only reason I know what Ciroc is.
I honestly don't even know what it is.
Ciroc vodka, Ciroc Obama, I think it was something he renamed himself. But like that's the only I've never even drank Ciroc before, but like he built that brand bigger than the brand ever built itself. So if he wants a bigger chunk of the chain, he sued them. And then they're like, okay, Diddy, you want to, come at us? Some of our executives have seen the crazy stuff that happens at your parties. And like, there's these videos of like, even LeBron being like, there's nothing like a Diddy party. And it might just be like Diddy threw crazy parties where people did a lot of drugs. It would get out of hand. everyone starts fucking and shit. And like Diddy brings in girls for for his guests and stuff. And like, technically everyone, it's very, very illegal and it's human trafficking. But at the end of the day, it's just Diddy's throwing huge parties. They're having fun. Like, it's like just a gigantic $1 million fueled frat party.
The other angle here, though, is could be that he's kind of a fall guy, and so they get the sense that he's about to start blabbing, and so they go, "Oh, okay, yeah, here. Oh, look at how horrible P Diddy is. Look at all the horrible stuff he was doing that we had nothing to do with." And so it diverts attention and it keeps a potential squeaky wheel from squeaking.
I mean, it's a wild situation. And it's crazy that someone who like shot up a Trump property like bridges these two crazy stories we have going on right now between P. Diddy getting arrested and he was hiding out in public in Central Park, which I think is an important factor. This guy was sitting, if I'm right, and it's where I think it is, it's in the Sheep's Meadow in Central Park. And he's just out in the open, like trying to be seen. Like he's dressed sort of regular, but he's almost trying to hide like in the public, but also be seen so that he cannot be like taken out in a raid or some crazy thing, like he might be under that much pressure where he's like, they want to get rid of me because I might talk. So who knows? I mean, the pictures of him looking around in the Sheep's Meadow, which is like this large lawn in New York City, and it was a nice weekend. And it's been good weather, so there's just tons of people playing frisbee on the great lawn, like having picnics, like whatnot. So him hiding, like being like, I'm in the open, hopefully like they don't kill me in the open, as opposed to like, oh, we raided Diddy's house and he showed a gun to an officer, so we shot him. Like, and then it all gets covered up. Who knows?
Well, he's hiding in plain sight, as they say, but it's like, that's smart because, there's a bunch of eyeballs and it makes people a little less willing to, do cloak and dagger stuff out in the public. So,
I mean, it's the funniest thing is this video of him and Obama that MTG posted, Marjorie Taylor Greene, where P. Diddy's like Obama just starts profusely sweating and P. Diddy's like, I'm the coolest guy here. Like everyone else sweating and Obama's just like wiping his face. And it's like, what is going on here? Like, just weird.
Sketchy. Yeah, he had a lot of interesting names show up on some of these allegations. One of them, I think, like, supposedly got like I think it was Prince Harry went to something. I mean, who knows what actually went on at that particular event, but it wasn't just the music industry that he was messing with.
I mean, also there's been huge raids in New York City regarding, Mayor Adams's office, like the fire chief getting raided by the FBI because of their involvements with, I think Eric Adams gave the key to the city to P. Diddy at one point, and then he had to revoke it.
Oh God.
Who knows if Mayor Adams was partying with Diddy, with Puff Daddy?
As somebody who's worked in politics and seen people kind of rise and fall, there is some element to like the people speaking up and kind of having a say, but a lot of it is really predetermined and would not surprise me if some seedy characters were behind plucking these seemingly obscure people like Adams and putting them into office, especially if you're like a useful idiot like Adams. He's not the brightest knife in the closet, as they say.
Is that what they say?
Suge Knight warned P. Diddy that his life is in danger because of the secret he knows in the little secret room they participated in. It's just weird. What the hell is going on? Like, and the thing is, they even hint to it in, Suge Knight. Like, who knows what's going on in these record companies where, like, maintaining power, like, it's just a wild story. And I don't think we'll ever get the truth, but it'll be interesting to see if this actually gets to court. And this Odie guy, this Jonathan Odie, look him up. No one knows where he is, and he's supposed to be reporting for a court date in 2024. But people think he might be dead or he's in witness protection. So it's like, geez.
Yeah, we wouldn't know if he's in witness protection.
What's the likelihood that P. Diddy gets convicted here. You have more experience in the criminal world than I do, but it's like once you're charged like this.
I mean, the criminal defense attorney in me says, just because you're charged with something does not mean it's legit. That being said, he's not dealing with just a few allegations. You're dealing with a lot. And there have been a lot of civil suits, people that have said certain things, hinted at some things, different homes being raided, this and that. I think his home in LA that was raided, like his kids were at the time or something like that. He flew to Antigua, Barbuda or something in order to get out of extradition. How about this? He's not really taking the steps I would assume someone of his prowess would if there wasn't some there is my point. To fly to a non-extradition country isn't just because it's a beautiful place in the Caribbean. There's a lot of places in the Caribbean that are beautiful. He just happened to choose one without extradition with it. And so it's okay, something might stick. I mean, that's another thing too, Zach, to your question.
What percentage of people end up pleading or getting convicted once they're charged federally?
Federal court, 95% end in pleas. Of the 5% that go to trial, 80% lose. So there's a 98%. Yeah, there's a 98 to 99% chance he'll get stuck with something. That's just based on the statistics of federal prosecutions.
But generally speaking, in federal court, especially once you're charged, the chances of you getting out scot-free are next to zero.
Yeah, you are speaking to someone that's won some federal jury trials, but that's fine.
Dog law.
No, real law. But that being said, yeah, it's another the biggest thing is people don't realize it, but most people commit crimes all the time without them thinking about it. And so once you're in the crosshairs and you've been cuffed and you're in there, if they want to get you, they're probably going to find something. I mean, they're going through all of his bones, all of his stuff. I mean, at a minimum, they can probably get him for drug trafficking for just ordering a supply of stuff to show up to one party.
Once they have you on this one charge and they're going through your stuff, it doesn't limit them to the charges that they file to get you arrested.
They can do a superseding indictment. They can do 2 of them, 3 of them, 4. They can do as many as they want if it's based on newly gained information. And so at the end of the day, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets stuck on something. I don't know if it's what it's going to be. It might be the original charges. But I just wouldn't be surprised, is my point. That being said, if I was representing him, my statements would be, my client maintains his innocence and we're going to zealously fight this. And we have faith in the criminal justice system to work out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I get
so
it.
He's charged with sex trafficking, but also racketeering. So you want to explain that too, just so people know?
Yeah. Yeah. So that means he can pretty much, they're alleging there's a enterprise, which is the key difference for racketeering is RICO, a term you might have heard in other things. The RICO laws actually originated from the mafia days. It was how they could go about pinning the criminal activities of the soldiers on the ground on the kingpins that would never get their hands dirty. And so what they have to, the big kicker in a RICO case versus a traditional conspiracy case is they have to establish what's called the enterprise. And that is, it's pretty much a more strictly defined group of individuals that are acting in a particular pattern with a more cohesive purpose. And then it's not like a traditional conspiracy where it's just a few people agree to something. It can even be more broad than that. Whereas as long as you are an active participant, intentionally engaging in the enterprises, furthering the enterprise's goals and purposes, you don't even have to know everybody else you're dealing with. You don't have to know what everyone else is doing. you can still be held liable for it. And so it's kind of a very large spiderweb means, and everybody can be on the hook for everything. So if they can establish and prove that an enterprise existed, and what was it, the Syracuse basketball player that said that he was the drug mule for him? Like there could be a guy in LA that's part of this enterprise that has no idea what that kid's supposedly involved in, yet still get hung up for it. And that's what I'm saying is it's used in very large scale, wide ranging things that happen over a significant period of time. And it's hard to get out of them just because typically the feds start getting people to roll on each other. And a RICO case is tough to beat when people start talking. Because if one co-conspirator goes on the stand, I think Young Thug's going through with something similar in Georgia right now. It's going on for like 7 months, it seems. But they can start having people take the stand and just start talking, and then it's really hard to beat it because you're not going to take the stand. I don't think P. Diddy's going to take. I would be shocked if Diddy took the stand and said, I didn't do any of this. Like, that would be malpractice.
Do you think Young Thug's like ratting on Diddy right now?
I don't think Young Thug is ratting on anybody. I think Young Thug is waiting for this case to go to verdict so he can be found not guilty. And if he is found guilty, I think he's waiting to go to appeal to get the whole case thrown out. I mean, that case is a mess. They've had new judges come in. They've had prosecutors get alleged for effectively bribing witnesses. They have too many problems in that case. I'm surprised it's still going on. I'm surprised the mistrial hasn't been granted.
What's crazy is that the trial is the longest criminal trial in Georgia's history. It started in January 2023.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know that. So he faces accusations of leading a criminal gang called Young Slime Life, YSL, racketeering, conspiracy, participating in criminal street gang activity, drug possession and distribution, firearms charges. So the judicial changes was the first judge, Ural Glanville, was recused following allegations of improper meetings with the prosecutors and witness. Then the next judge, Judge Krause, briefly took over but emphasized the importance of maintaining public trust. And then the judge Ingram was appointed but withdrew due to potential conflicts of interest. And now there's Judge Paige Reese Whitaker.
I'm just surprised they didn't do a mistrial already. I mean, I've never heard of such, and I'm highly doubtful that it goes to verdict and the verdict is guilty based on all that nonsense. But if it is, it's going to be.
Has the jury been impaneled this whole time?
Yeah, dude.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, they deserve medals or something.
So they've been there for about a year and 3/4?
Yeah, I would.
That's terrible.
I feel like their civil rights are being violated.
Oh, my God.
Like you said, it's the longest trial in Georgia's history. I cannot imagine what the appeal is going to look like. It's going to be 1,000 pages of problems. They held they held his attorney in contempt and put him in jail.
Did you see that, Billy?
Yeah, for conduct that the judge ultimately got to. Anyway, yeah. So I don't think Diddy's trial will be like that. The feds are historically a little bit more put together than Fulton County, Georgia, and so I mean, they will try to turn it into a circus if it goes to trial. It's a good defense strategy, but I just don't see it.
So the trial was on a hiatus for nearly 2 months with the jury absent from the courtroom since June. So does that mean that they were allowed to go home?
I think so, which by itself is, I mean, typically jurors get to go home. Okay. Like the idea of sequestering a jury doesn't happen that often. That being said, sequestration meaning it's like the show, The Juror, or what there was that comedy show where they did the reality skit about the one juror. The sequestration, meaning you're going off to like a hotel, that doesn't happen that often. I mean, so typically jurors get to go home every night, but to go home and not be actively involved in the case and then have to come back 2 months later, I've never heard of that. And I can tell you the likelihood or the prospect of outside information coming to the jury during that time period is so high, given the notoriety of the defendants, the notoriety of the shenanigans that have been going on in court. I don't see how this case doesn't get overturned. I can sit here and tell you like 5 structural errors that, and I'm just a layperson that just sees things every once in a while. I mean, I'm not a layperson for the sake of talking about criminal defense work, but what I'm saying is I'm not a part of this case. I haven't followed it every day. I have seen plenty of clips and read about it. And just in the few things I've seen, that's just stood out as reversible error, in my opinion. So I don't know how he's going to be found guilty. I'm surprised it's still going on, but we'll see. I don't know.
How much should jurors get paid a day? Like $10?
It's a little more than that. Certainly not a lot.
Can they lose their job?
No, it's actually, that's the one thing that they cannot lose their job for being on jury duty. That's a crime. It's like the one thing that's like protected. But I can imagine they might lose some value. I mean, imagine if you had to do it.
Yeah, $50 per day in Georgia.
Wow.
It's crazy. Makes you wonder if the 2 months that they were out of court, it was so that they could get back to work. You know, it's like, you know, I mean, that's so long. They deserve more than $50. They deserve a lot more than $50 a day for that. I can tell you that.
So, well, they've made what, $10,000 though, away from work.
I want to be like, who's helping with the child care? Who's helping with life? Like, there's a lot of real medical appointments. And granted, that's why you do voir dire to screen for a jury that can sit. But I seriously doubt voir dire was like, oh yeah, who's going to be prepared to sit here for 9 months?
$50 a day. That's 4 hours of minimum wage work. Or no, okay, no, it's 8 hours minimum wage. 7.
Well, if Kamala wins, it'll be half an hour.
Yeah. Jeez.
No tax on overtime.
Well, that's Trump. I'll appreciate that. Not that anyway, but yeah. So as far as Diddy's concerned, kind of like the Ghislaine Maxwell or the Epstein stuff. I mean, Maxwell's list never came out. I'll be interested if everything of Diddy's comes out. I seriously think you're going to see some real power players try to keep everything shut. There's just too much at stake.
Jeez, I mean, LeBron said Diddy parties or something different. LeBron just definitely attended a Diddy
or
party.
Knew of it, knew what was going on. He might not have been in those rooms, but you hear about it. You kind of, from what I understood, there's like the front room and the front party, and then there's like the after party.
Yeah, the freak offs.
Yeah, I don't even know what that is.
Oh, it's horrible, Elliot. It's like they made them have sex with each other, and then Diddy would masturbate to it.
That just sounds like a Michael Jackson sleepover.
It's a really depraved.
He never touched those kids, man.
Diddy just watched.
I saw something about like them drugged, like Justin Bieber hypothetically may have been drugged with, and who even knows? I mean, like the world of celebrity in Hollywood sounds depraved. But the craziest thing is that back to the sports world, P. Diddy once threatened the strength and conditioning coach at USC because his son wasn't like going to do their workouts, and he was like doing his own workouts with his own trainer. And P. Diddy went to his office and threw a dumbbell at him, like trying to kill, and he was like, yo, dude, what the fuck? It's crazy because P. Diddy's son played corner, Iona Prep, and got recruited to go to USC. So, I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, Fortunately, there are two tiers of justice in this country, it seems.
Well, that's the thing is by the time they decided to indict him and go after him, I think they've probably done their checks and balances to figure out like no one's coming to save him.
How bad, Elliot, do you have to be to actually get charged with something if you know and end up in Pete Diddy's situation? Like it's a tip of the iceberg type thing usually, right? You know, it's like unless you're like openly in public, shoot somebody on camera, it's like the chances of you being one of these elites, you got to be up to some really bad stuff.
Yeah, and allegations here are that. I mean, these aren't white collar crimes. Like these are about as bad as. I mean, it's up there. There's probably like 2 levels higher of worse conduct, but as far as like the cartel and murder or trafficking and child porn, like those are probably which by the way, like technically if any of this is on tape, it might qualify as child porn. But as far as
not the podcast.
No. I'm saying whatever the freak offs were, like depending on the ages of the people that are in it. But I'm saying like what's alleged here is got plenty of drugs, plenty of rape, plenty of
racketeering,
money laundering, wire fraud. I mean, everything's wire fraud. Like there's plenty of. There's lots of stuff that just off the top of my head, I'm like, it's going to be hard for him to beat it. Granted, some defense attorney is going to get paid.
Now, here's my question. So back in the day, there used to be articles like top 10 craziest things you can buy on Amazon.
On Amazon, sure.
One of them was a 55-gallon industrial one of them was a 55-gallon drum of lube. So if you're P. Diddy and you have thousands of bottles of lube that are found in your house, I feel like this would be the one time you'd actually have use for a 55-gallon drum of lube.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're not, if you're in P. Diddy's situation, you're not trying to save money on the lube. Like, who cares? Go down to the CVS and pick up, you know, the whole shelf when you could save 10 cents or whatever, you know, on the gallon.
He's just going to say he really liked blue from old school and was trying to recreate.
Is that where it's from?
Yeah. When
they had an industrial drum of lube in old school?
Yeah. When Blue gets in the lube mud wrestling with those 2 chicks and croaks.
I mean, literally, it's $1,700 for 55 gallons of lube.
Oh, that's a deal.
And yeah, compared to the $40 point. So let's look at
let's run the math on this.
I'm doing the math on this right now. So in smaller ounces, it is 60 cents an ounce. And this is 20 cents a fluid ounce if you do the drum versus the bottle in this type of lube. So, I mean, I don't know what he's doing.
Billy's about to get in some lube arbitrage over here.
Yeah. Dude, I might just start repackaging lube and selling it to these freak off people.
Diddy's freak off special.
Buy an industrial. I mean, that's got to be insane. Like a literal keg of lube, 55 gallons.
Yeah, I would not have wanted to be the evidence collection guy when doing that raid. I would have needed a hazmat suit.
I mean, what the hell imagine like what is like you wake up in the morning and like, oh man, a freak off just happened the night before and you walk into the room. How disgusting does that place have to be?
The bodies, someone's got to take care of the bodies. You know, the few people sleeping in the corner, whatever, got to be ushered out. And then, you know, probably a flamethrower.
The industrial barrel of lube is just tipped over and there's just lube all over the floor.
Oh my God.
I mean, some of these memes that are being tweeted about it are just so insane. There's like Joe Budden and P. Diddy dancing, and they're like, this is them right before a freak off.
God.
Yeah, I think a lot of accusations about who did what are about to fly around.
Yeah.
At least none of them had beepers on them.
Yeah, that's, you know, there's Mossad, like this is fact. Mossad intercepted a shipping container from Taiwan that had all the beepers in it going to Lebanon, and they just hooked up every beeper with explosives. And apparently it was being bought specifically by Hezbollah, and they were, which is crazy. So it's like, if you're a Hezbollah, why would you all buy beepers from the same place in the first place? Like
bulk pricing.
Bulk pricing.
Catch me up on this. My understanding was that they were not specifically designed to be explosive, but they somehow had made it so that the battery would overheat and it would explode. But it sounds like they had actual explosive, like intended explosive beepers.
I think they put a device with a small amount of explosive to set off the lithium battery in. So, I mean, hey, who knows? China might have the same, death switch and all.
Isn't that how they took down the Malaysian flight, Billy?
Yeah.
The lithium batteries?
Hey, who knows? But that's crazy.
I mean,
they blew up two-way radios as well. So there was funerals going on for the people who had died from the explosive pagers, and then everyone's two-way radios also blew up. So the thought process is like the October 6th attacks were planned using non-modern technology, so they couldn't be surveyed. So like you can't really tap a beeper. I don't even know how beepers work. Did you ever have a beeper? I'm 25.
My mom had a beeper, right? But it's like,
I remember, how about this? Anyone who has a beeper now is either a doctor or doing something sketchy.
Terrorist. But that's what I'm saying. Like, why wouldn't the beepers themselves set off the alarm bells? It's like, when's the last time you saw a beeper? Does everyone in Lebanon walk around with beepers? Is this some like fad?
I don't know. I feel like a lot of things in Lebanon are going to sketch me out, though.
Yeah. Well, wasn't that where that huge explosion was?
There have been a lot of huge explosions in Lebanon, but which?
At the port?
Is Lebanon where they took out the Iranian general?
Yeah. So the Beirut explosion, the 2020 Beirut explosion. So basically a large amount of ammonium nitrate stored at the port of Beirut in the capital city of Lebanon exploded, causing at least 218 deaths, 7,000 injuries. And it was like the largest explosion, the equivalent to around 1.1 kilotons of TNT, which was all straight up like ammonium nitrate fertilizer that was being stored in the port that just went boom. And it was the equivalent of a 3.3 magnitude earthquake. And it was one of the most powerful non-nuclear explosions on record. That sounds sketchy in itself.
So what's going on with the? I mean, is it just a terrorist attack, kind of the general ho-hum, Hezbollah just killing people thing, or what? Is there some other purpose here? Is it tied to what's going on in Israel? Like, I don't have the background on this one.
Oh, about the pagers blowing up?
Yeah.
Oh, that's about it. Yeah, Israel, Hezbollah is running with Hamas, and so Israel has definitely extended the war against Hamas beyond its borders against Hezbollah generally. I mean, they took out one of its leaders not that long ago. That's what triggered Iran to try to send in its missiles like a couple months ago, in response to that. And that was outside of Israel and Gaza borders. It was because they were going after Hezbollah.
I mean, that's terrible.
But my side against Hezbollah has been,
if they had the tech to just cause a lithium battery to blow up just by hacking, if they could do that to a pager, I'm kind of glad that they intercepted it and put explosives in each singular pager, because if they had the tech to blow up a pager remotely, then they could absolutely do it to a cell phone.
Yeah. I'm going to be a little more careful about coming onto an airplane with the lithium batteries that I don't tell won't talk about my carry-on.
Well, I mean, lithium is definitely the future of battery technology. Totally not vouching for my investment in a lithium battery company, but
didn't they just find two big supplies of lithium in the US, like one in Pennsylvania and one in Northeast Texas? I think they found so much that it kind of renders everybody else.
Yeah, we need to get our domestic lithium source going. But they also can, if they defect a little bit, if you throw out a lithium battery in like you see all these videos of these dump trucks catching on fire and dumping their whole loads out in the middle of the street just because a lithium battery goes off, and they're like, because how it is, it just turns into a bomb and then it'll blow up the whole truck. So as soon as they see smoke coming out, they dump it.
You know how to tie all of these stories today, all three of them together. So you know why Hezbollah and Hamas and all these organizations have been resurgent in the last 3.5 years is because Donald Trump put huge sanctions on Iran, and Iran is the one who funds all of these terrorist organizations. And so, you know, what we see in Hezbollah right now are they're using these low tech, they're probably not very smart people. You know, they're just kind of these patsies that get blown up. And then we see in the United States, you know, two losers with low technology managing to get close enough to Trump to shoot. You know, it's like I'm not so sure that both of these shooters at Trump are not tied to the resurgence of Iran.
There could be foreign involvement with
Iran. Didn't they have them? Like, wasn't there a hit out on Trump that they said Iran, like right after the shooter happened, they're like, Iran did it?
Yeah. In fact, the golf course guy, Ralph, whatever his name is, he wrote a book recently where he called on Iran to kill Trump.
Oh.
That was in his book. And so, you know, and I think didn't Crooks have a bunch of offshore accounts and not just bank accounts, but like communications and a cell phone from some foreign power? Whatever came of that?
Well, let's also realize the real thing that ties them together, and a company with a lot of foreign investments, BlackRock.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the foreign. I mean, there's a lot of people that want Trump dead. It could be anybody.
Yeah, so the Trump shooter had multiple encrypted accounts overseas, based in Belgium, New Zealand, and Germany. Based abroad, where organizations know it's harder for law enforcement to get into. So 3 foreign email accounts used by Crooks because they had his password. They were all mostly related to weapons and ammunition purchases. He also had bombs. People forget that. Crooks had bombs that didn't go off.
Were they pagers?
Getting your dick blown off by a pager has got to suck.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't die and get the 72 virgins and you're just stuck here on Earth, you know, with a burned off dick, and you got to think about it the rest of your life.
Oh my God. I mean, the videos from the hospitals where like all these dudes are just like grabbing their dicks was freaking terrible.
I feel bad for somebody that like wasn't connected with Hezbollah and just thought they were just getting a form of communication. Yeah.
God.
Well, I mean, from what it sounds like, they were all going to Hezbollah. But like, of course, there's definitely some collateral damage. Some people who died, apparently one girl died who was standing next to a guy's waist. It's terrible to hear, but who knows if that's even true.
So we know that there's one dead girl that wasn't Hezbollah, but what percentage of the people that have died from this were the Hezbollah terrorists themselves? It sounds like if they're 9, then it's 8 and 9, 88%.
It's also like, who keeps a list?
I know, but it's like, what an inefficient way to cause terrorism. You know, that's going to kill recruitment to Hezbollah.
Like I mean, how are they going to start communicating? Because the October 6th thing was all like low tech, like communication that they couldn't pick up because they thought it was going to be through like WhatsApp or some messaging service. What if they go to pigeons? What if they go back to pigeons?
Yeah. Good.
Hiding in plain sight.
Then how, you know, going low tech to prevent high tech surveillance, they go back to pigeons. Are we going to have exploding pigeons?
Well, we know birds aren't real, first of all.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, the drones by themselves are pretty effective. Watching all that video of Ukraine and how like the drone stuff is going down, like just low tech drones, like,
dude, the suicide drones where they literally are just like flying up to people with explosives, like flying grenades. Like, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
And the only real effective like counter drone method is a shotgun.
Yeah.
And you got to be close enough. It's like they're too small to hit.
Bring back skeet shooting. Trap shooting. Gotta get good at that.
Well, do they have lithium-ion batteries?
That actually, maybe I should, next time I go to the range or like I'm out in the field, I should get a drone. Thing is, you need a bunch of them. Get some cheap drones, just practice shooting drones with a 20 gauge.
I mean, that's the future.
Yeah. Shit. That's like worse than the Black Mirror episode where the dogs are coming.
Oh no, yeah.
Because they can fly. They can fly through a window. Like you could maybe get like some sort of physical bird.
Oh yeah, no. Well, there's the Black Mirror episode with the bees.
Yeah.
Hated in the Nation or whatever, where the bees are robots and they go kill the person who's like on the shit list of Twitter that day. And whoever is the most hated person the next day gets killed by the mechanical bees. It's a matter of time before. I mean, they're already talking about replacing and bees are ironically like the natural conduit for that because of the shortage in some places. But the idea of having drone-based pests as a means of, they'll call it for agricultural use, but ultimately it'll be weaponized and hacked.
Wasn't there a Michael Crichton book about I think it was like The Swarm or something, where they had little robots that were flying around and they like made a cloud or something? It's like, we're not too far off.
I mean, the tech's there.
I don't think they could make something that's that small.
Not yet.
That'd be terrifying.
Any updates in dog law, Elliot? Any major case updates?
No, I'm just looking forward to Tyreek Hill winning his civil rights suit against the.
Do you want to go? Do you want to get into that?
Would love you guys to break it down. Have they done a lawsuit?
No, but it's a matter of time. I would.
To give a little bit of backstory, one of the cases that Elliot and I were arguing about for probably 4 hours over text the other day was this Tyreek Hill thing. So, everybody's seen the video. So, Elliot, why don't you give your perspective on why Tyreek Hill is an angel? And then I will.
Even Tyreek admitted, and I agree with him, that he could have handled it better, and it likely, or it very possibly would not have escalated. That being said, I believe he was totally within his right to do everything but for speeding, where the lights came on, he pulled over, he affirmatively rolled down his window. I think at the 136 mark of the video, you see him hand over his ID and registration. The officer proceeded to knock on the window as he was lowering it, and he said something like, "You don't need to be knocking on my window like that." Mind you, at this point, once the information has been provided, that's the end of what's necessary to effectuate the stop. Now, the officer proceeds to ask him an investigatory question of, why is your seatbelt not on, or why aren't you wearing your seatbelt? He has no duty to answer that question. The officer either has enough to cite him for that or he doesn't. And sure, was Tyreek a little rude? Sure, but it's your right to be frustrated. And mind you, some people say, well, officer safety, the windows appeared to be tinted. Here's the issue about window tint is first, he wasn't cited for it. Second, they weren't investigating it. Third, you actually have to raise the window up to do a window tint check. And the biggest issue here is there was no evidence or reason to even suspect any risk of danger to the officer. And so you have to have a reasonable, articulable suspicion to advance the idea of a security threat. Now, mind you, cops are allowed to order you out of the vehicle.
Pennsylvania versus Mims, that's right. Minimally intrusive.
But it comes down to why and when it's happening. And this is not a standard practice for the officer or this police department for a routine traffic stop. They ordered him out because he wasn't being compliant with the window situation. And then they forced him to the ground. All of this is to say, I don't think that was necessary. My biggest problem is when they forced him to the ground the second time because he was cuffed and secured behind the vehicle, standing up. He was asked to sit down. Granted, for no good reason, because he was already secured. He wasn't posing a threat. He wasn't a flight risk. He wasn't doing anything. He said he was going to. And then before he did, the second officer jumps on his back and forces him down. I think that was over the top as well. Generally speaking, as to what rights may or may not have been violated, I think it'll be pretty close, but I do think they went beyond the pale. It depends on what judge is there, but ultimately he was cited for going 60, and I don't think.
Let's kind of walk through the few trigger points. So the one big trigger point is the window going down thing, right? So if officer has a reason to ask you to put your window down, do you have to comply?
You have to provide your information. That's all you have to do. And he did that.
Well, I'm not talking about providing information. What I'm saying is under Pennsylvania versus Mims, if the officer has, for officer safety or any reason at all, they can order you out of the car. And the Supreme Court standard was minimally intrusive. And so if if you're talking to a police officer and they tell you to roll the window down,
which he did,
he rolled it back up.
And then he rolled it down. He rolled it down every time the officer knocked and asked him to. They wanted him to keep it down.
Right. But I guess the question is, was the officer in the wrong to request that he order that he put his window down? Let's just start with that.
I don't think it's a Fourth Amendment violation to request it, but I also don't think it's unlawful and worthy of further force and detention to deny it. Just because an officer makes a request of you does not mean you have to do it. Like if an officer's walking down the street and he's like, hey, stop, I want to talk to you. Well, granted, there's a display of authority there, and one could argue whether you should or shouldn't, but it's not unlawful to resist an unlawful arrest.
I don't disagree, but it was the order to roll the window down unlawful.
I wouldn't say it was unlawful. I just don't think it was necessary to comply. Meaning,
but are you allowed to not comply with a lawful order?
It's not a request to do something.
Request is different than an order. He's stopped. He's stopped, right? He's not in custody, but he's detained. So he's not free to leave.
Sure. Yeah. I'll go the distance and say it was an unlawful order. It's an unlawful search. Forget the seizure. It's a search problem. So typically the argument is you have the Pennsylvania against Mims says you have the right to take him out of the vehicle. That's a seizure issue. By making him keep the window down, it's an unlawful search because you have no reason to continue investigating the interior of the car. And so if there's an odor in there he doesn't want, or you want to start snooping around through the windows to see what else is going on, that's a search issue. He's complying with it and he's helping you effectuate the purpose of the stop. He doesn't have to keep the window down. And I think you could argue it's an unlawful search. Now, what's the point of it?
You're couching this in Fourth Amendment land, right? But there's another element to it. Just because it's not an unlawful, or it might have been an unlawful search if that was the primary purpose of what the officer was doing. But if the officer is trying to take control of the situation, there's dark windows, can't see through them, furtive movements in the car.
They didn't cite furtive movements in the car. I would give you, they didn't cite that he was reaching for something or that he came up on the registrations being a gun owner. There was nothing to suspect a weapon in this experience. And that's to me, the biggest kicker. If there was something to suspect a firearm or a weapon of any sort, I think this would be a completely different case. But at the end of the day, he was ordered out of the car because the officer didn't like the fact that he was talking to him that way and that he wasn't keeping his window down as he was ordering him to do. Well,
let's move to the take out of the car. So was taking him out of the car unlawful?
I think and I need to go back through and check, but I'm pretty sure there becomes some difference between objective reasonableness and subjective components. And I don't want to bore the listeners, but there's objective reasonableness based on the subjective factors that the officer had at the time. Okay. So meaning you step out and you assess it based on what the officer knew or observed in that moment, what perceptions he had. In this situation, based on everything I saw, and all I have is that little bit of body cam, I think the officer did it as a means of this guy. He didn't order him out of the car when he pulled him over. And mind you, he didn't proceed to search the interior of the car for a weapon. This wasn't a Terry stop where he was, or a Terry frisk, where he was saying, get out of the car. I need to make sure the car is safe. You can sit back in it when you're done. He got him out of the car because he was being a prick. And he got him out of the car because he wasn't keeping his window down. But why did he want his window down? If it was a safety issue, why don't you further investigate the vehicle for a weapon and then put Tyreek back in the car once you realize there's no weapon? It was done as a retaliation for his noncompliance, which that's when your objective variables start to kick in and say you weren't pulling him out because of part of a routine procedure for securing the scene. You pulled him out because you thought he was an asshole, which to me is my problem. That's my problem. And Tyreek admitted he was an asshole.
Right. So let's zoom out a criminal defense land and constitutional right land. What is your advice to somebody who gets pulled over by the cops, Elliot?
Generally, keep your hands on the wheel, get your license and registration, give it to them, remain compliant and cordial, and be on your way. Don't answer any questions. Don't talk to the police. Like if they say, why isn't your seatbelt on? Don't answer it. If they say, roll down your window.
Wait, so you're not supposed to answer any questions?
Don't answer any questions. That's both of our advice.
Is this true that if you carry an unopened bottle of vodka in your car,
The classic.
and you get pulled over and you're drunk, but you jump out of the car right after you pulled over, you show the officer you're opening the vodka, and then you chug it, and then you close it and you sit by the side of the road and be like, you can't tell if I was drunk before or after I chugged that vodka. Is that, could you actually get out of it?
Well, you'll definitely get drunk in public. So you're definitely going to get that. You run a high risk of a lot of other problems by jumping out of a vehicle before the officers arrived and pulling out an object. So that's going to scare them. It's theoretically possible that it destroys the prospect of, but if you engaged in any other behavior that would have been consistent with intoxication, you're right. You're not going to be able to, the tests might not work, but the way DUIs work, at least in Virginia, they don't even have to get a blood alcohol read on you or make you do any tests to stick a DUI. It's based on intoxication beyond a reasonable doubt. So honestly, my position as a prosecutor would be, who does that? Somebody that was probably drunk. You know what I mean? So I'm not advising anyone to do what you just suggested.
The other problem with that tactic too is with the blood test, they can tell, okay, you drank this much of the bottle of vodka. They can calculate what your BAC should have been, when it goes down, that sort of stuff. So they could say, well, yeah, he did get very drunk and he went from some level to 0.34. But they could calculate, well, he was really at a 0.2 before he chugged all that vodka too, because they can, it's not perfect science, but they can calculate how fast. Yeah, don't do that.
What about with mouthwash?
Mouthwash, the alcohol usually burns off and doesn't get into your bloodstream. So it's usually mouth alcohol that will last for some time. But ultimately, my advice is this. Don't do any of the field tests and don't breathe into the field thing on the side of the road. None of that's admissible. I mean, none of that. It's only admissible for probable cause to arrest you. And it 9 times out of 10, they already think you're intoxicated. I mean, I'm not going to say that you couldn't get out of it, but if you've had anything to drink, first of all, don't drink and drive. How about that? But if let me qualify it. But if you have had anything to drink, there's no reason to engage in any of that. You don't have to engage in any of that. You don't have to do the walk and step, the eye stagnus. You don't have to tell them how many drinks you had, where you're going, where you're coming from, who's with you, why you're driving in this direction. You don't have to tell them anything. You just give them your license and registration. At most, you can say, why am I being detained? And am I free to leave? Those are the things. And if you're not free to leave, say, am I under arrest? And if not, you just wait and then continue.
Let's say that you're in that situation and the cop orders you out of the car. Do you have to get out of the car? not bringing up Tyreek. I'm just trying to help people not get in more trouble here.
Yeah, you do have to get out of the vehicle because they're investigating intoxicated driving. Okay. So you do have to get out of the vehicle. That being said,
you don't have to do the tests.
In fact, if you really want to be on top of your game, when a lot of times they make it sound like it's an order, but it's actually a request. Okay. And people don't realize that. They're not going to tell you can say no. So if they order you out of the car, tell them, am I free to stay in the vehicle, or is this an order? Am I being detained? Okay. Because they might come back and say, no, you don't have to get out. Like they might, but if they're ordering you out, now you're out. Now you're seized, you're out, right? Then when they do it and they start telling you to do the walk-in step or any tests or anything like that, you don't have to answer anything. You don't have to do anything. And my advice to you is politely say, I refuse to engage in any of these tests. I refuse to answer any questions. Am I free to leave? And until you're free to leave.
And where do you do your arguing with the cop?
You don't argue with the cop. Do not ever argue with the cop. It makes no purpose. They're not there to be your judge, or they're not going to change what they're doing because you had something snarky to say.
Right. So where do you argue?
In court with your lawyer.
Sweet. Well, thanks.
All right, that's a good way to wrap it up, right?
Don't drink and drive. Just
do not drink and drive.
Don't drink and drive.
That's right.
Oh, there's Uber exists.
If you have to be in Virginia or Texas, just visit blueridgeva.law and sign up for a free consultation.
Definitely hit them up on that. All right, guys. Thank you so much for coming. Crackheads, crack maidens, crack nation. Please subscribe. We've been getting a lot of traction lately. Shout out everybody who's been listening. Since we've last spoken, we have doubled subscribers, and this will be a good introduction to YouTube for all of our new listeners. It's kind of nuts. When I first started this thing, we've been slowly gaining. We got a sponsor, so thank you for everybody who's been listening and helping this thing build. We have some pretty crazy guests coming next week. Shout out Throw God, and Stu Feiner might be coming on. So tune in next week, and hope you guys like this episode. And this is not technically any legal advice.
No, not at all.
Not legal advice. None of this is legal advice. But
thank you.
Love you, crackheads. Have a good one.
Daddy used to knock them down, yeah, and I should have known not to mess around with the nightlife or the bright lights or the women who won't be my wife. He told me, Sonny, leave them vices on the shelf. Oh, but the dogs in the dive